Could we actually pause for a moment and explain to the audience what the fuck a think tank is?
Yeah, that's good.
In real terms, in actual terms,
Yes.
not like their mission statement, what they believe it is.
Yeah, so there are different kinds of think tanks, but most think tanks, like the big ones, they do a couple of things, right? So CAP is the biggest one on the liberal side, and that's Neera Tanen's think tank. So maybe it's useful to just kind of focus on them. So one is they have a lot of people who have jobs at the think tank that they're basically just sitting there and waiting for the next Democratic administration. So they're like the next administration and waiting. It's not clear what they do day to day, but they get paid a salary and they, I don't know, occasionally like do panel talks and whatever, right? So just kind of a holding pin for those people. Then they also produce sort of policy that they push on Capitol Hill and, try to get the Democratic Party behind. And, if you're that kind of institution, it's pretty easy to do that. So they kind of agenda set on what like the boundaries of policy are going to be. They also provide day-to-day help to members of Congress if they need something like, I need to help on this or that policy. Their staffs are not necessarily well funded or anything like that. So they go out to the think tanks and
because members of Congress, they don't have the staffs to, actually, craft the model legislation. They don't have the staff to even, often read and understand the legislation. So this work is basically outsourced to this constellation of think tanks.
Right.
The actual work of legislating.
Right, and in many ways, it's very similar to lobbying in that respect, right? So the lobbyists write a lot of the bills as well because they don't have the capacity inside Congress to construct these bills, on this level. So, and then the lobbying thing, I think, if I had to describe it very shortly, I would just say these are unregistered lobbying organizations, right?
Yeah.
I mean, first and foremost, that's what they do. And frankly, a lot of their money comes from the same places, right? So CAP takes money from, think of any major corporation in the U.S. and they take money from them, right? Google, Facebook, Goldman Sachs, Citibank, anyone you could think of, they take money from. And they also take money from foreign governments like lobbyists do as well, including the three that I saw recently was Japan, Germany, and United Arab Emirates.
Yeah.
So
this is an important point, right? That these think tanks, they police the boundaries. Like I think like CAP, which has the word progress in its name, is going to police the leftward boundaries of the policy that the Democratic coalition is going to pursue. Right. And what's writing that agenda, what's actually setting that agenda is the money that comes in, is the sources of funding.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and one other thing I guess would be worth pointing out is they do a lot of work in the media as well. And I try to replicate this to some degree at People's Policy Project. But, if you're writing a story about whatever, some policy issue, if you're at the Washington Post or the New York Times, like, the obvious source you go to is some expert at CAP or some expert at Center on Budget and Policy Priorities or some expert at one of the like big six think tanks. And so that becomes, they can steer the media narrative as well because the media also does not have the independent ability to evaluate policies that are before them, right? In most cases, they have to go to find some expert. And so then they go to CAP and it's CAP's plan, but they may not even know that CAP came up with it, It's very much like a closed bubble of information that they really help drive, like whether in Congress or among media or anything like that.
So does that work for you? Are you able to get that same kind of access and get your stuff written up from the People's Policy Project in the same way that CAP can?
Yeah, we get a lot of stuff. I've gotten stuff written up in the Times and the Wall Street Journal and Financial Times, Bloomberg. Like we get a lot of links and a lot of, every time I put out a paper, I do the comms game and I try to reach out. I give you an exclusive story on our paper. And people eat that shit up and they write about it and, So I've been effective in that sense, and I've been effective in the sense that there are a handful of offices that you probably guess who are well aligned with like my political view that, I could talk to their staff, and if they need help, sometimes they come to me, or I might give them some advice or try to get them going on something. But it's a small niche that I'm operating with, right? So
the squad has been good to you. I'll say it even if you can't.
Right, and the big core difference between what you do and what CAP does is you're funded by small donations on Patreon, whereas CAP is funded by Exxon.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm not navigating any stakeholders or who's this going to piss off or who's that going to piss off or anything like that, or trying to raise more money. I don't have any of those issues. And then the other thing is like when you run a campaign like Bernie's, the thing that they want to do is say all the policies are stupid and ridiculous and blah 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 blah. And the reason they think that is because they go talk to someone at the other think tanks and they tell them that, and then they write it up because the press has no independent ability to evaluate any of the policies, right? And so I think I was reasonably effective at being able to be like, no, this is totally like, I'll show you exactly how this would work. Let me lay it out for you. And here's some numbers, here's some spreadsheets, to at least push back on that. So.